Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some of the nicest people you know often carry the deepest shadows? Maybe it's the friend who never says no, even when it's destroying them. Maybe it's the colleague who always smiles, yet inside is boiling with resentment. Or maybe it's you. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Behind every good person lies a darkness, hidden, repressed, and waiting. And the very thing that makes us good, if left unchecked, can slowly turn us into something unrecognizable. We don't like to admit this. We'd rather believe that goodness is pure, that kindness is a shield against corruption. But history, philosophy, and psychology tell us otherwise. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German philosopher and theologian who stood against the Nazis, once warned that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. He knew firsthand that people don't need to be evil to contribute to destruction. Sometimes they only need to be obedient. Sometimes they only need to be too good. Think about it. How many atrocities in history were carried out not by monsters, but by ordinary men and women who thought they were simply doing their duty? Good people, in their silence, in their passivity, in their desire to avoid conflict, can enable horrors. But let's step closer to your own life. How often do you say yes when every bone in your body screams no? How often do you swallow your truth just to keep the peace? How often do you forgive, not because you believe in second chances, but because you're afraid of losing love? On the surface, these seem like acts of kindness, noble, selfless, good. But beneath them lies something darker: fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of conflict, and fear, when disguised as goodness, is poison. Nietzsche once said, "Beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster." But there's another warning hidden here. Beware that when trying to be an angel, you do not become a shadow. Let's talk psychology. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, introduced the concept of the shadow. The shadow is the part of us we refuse to see, the anger, the envy, the desires we bury because they don't fit our self-image of being good. But here's the paradox. The more we deny the shadow, the stronger it becomes. The more we insist, "I'm a good person, I could never think that, I could never feel that," the more those repressed feelings grow in the dark. And eventually, they erupt, often in destructive, unconscious ways. Think about the person who never allows themselves to be angry. They suppress it for years, smiling, nodding, being agreeable, until one day they explode in rage. Not controlled anger, not healthy expression, but volcanic, devastating fury. Or the person who prides themselves on being selfless. They give and give, never asking, never taking, until resentment builds like a toxin in their blood. And when it finally spills over, it poisons not only their relationships, but their own soul. The shadow always finds a way out. Machiavelli, often misunderstood as cynical, saw this danger too. He wrote that men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. The so-called good person often seeks love, always wanting to be liked, always wanting to be seen as virtuous. But in doing so, they make themselves vulnerable to manipulation, to exploitation, to betrayal. And here's the dark twist. Sometimes the good person, after years of being walked on, transforms into something far more dangerous than the so-called villain. They become passive-aggressive. They manipulate in silence. They harm under the mask of virtue. In other words, goodness without boundaries rots. Let me share a story. There was once a young woman known for her kindness. Everyone praised her. She was the friend who would answer calls at midnight, the colleague who took on extra work without complaint, the partner who forgave every slight. She wore her goodness like armor, believing it protected her. But over time, that armor grew heavy. Her kindness became expectation, her sacrifices invisible, and slowly her light dimmed. She became bitter, exhausted, invisible even to herself. One day, she snapped. Not in a dramatic outburst, but in something worse. Indifference. She stopped caring, stopped giving, stopped trusting. And the same people who once admired her goodness now whispered about her coldness. This is the fate of many good people. not destroyed by cruelty from others, but by the weight of their own unbalanced kindness. Here's the paradox you must face. To truly be good, you must first embrace your capacity for darkness. Plato spoke of the tripartite soul, the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive. To live well, he argued, is to balance these forces. But many good people live unbalanced lives, cutting off entire parts of themselves to appear virtuous. They silence their spirited side, their anger, their ambition, their hunger. But a soul in denial is a soul divided. Goodness, real goodness, is not the absence of darkness. It is the mastery of it. Think about the strongest people you've ever admired, the ones whose kindness actually mattered. Were they naive? No. Were they endlessly forgiving? No. They were kind because they understood cruelty. They were patient because they knew the taste of anger. They were generous because they had seen selfishness up close and chose differently. The most dangerous kind of goodness is the blind kind, the unexamined, self-sacrificing, denial-driven goodness that refuses to acknowledge its shadow. That kind of goodness is brittle. It breaks under pressure. But the goodness that lasts, the goodness that transforms the world, is forged in fire. It is goodness with boundaries, goodness with strength, goodness that knows its own darkness and therefore cannot be controlled by it. So let me ask you again, are you really a good person? Or are you simply afraid of being anything else? Do you choose kindness out of love or out of fear? Do you forgive because you believe in redemption or because you cannot bear confrontation? Do you help others because you want to lift them up or because you don't know who you are without being needed? These are hard questions, but they matter because until you face the dark side of your goodness, your light will never be your own. Bonhoeffer, Nietzsche, Jung, Machiavelli, Plato, they all, in their own way, point to the same truth. Goodness without strength is weakness, and weakness, when stretched long enough, becomes cruelty in disguise. The world does not need more people who are nice. It needs people who are real, who are whole, who can look into their own shadow without flinching. Only then can kindness be powerful. Only then can forgiveness be true. Only then can goodness be dangerous, not in its corruption, but in its authenticity. So here is the thought I want to leave you with. The dark side of good people is not that they fail to live up to their ideals. It is that, in denying their darkness, they betray themselves. But the moment you stop running from your shadow, the moment you accept that your light and darkness are not enemies but partners, you step into a different kind of power, a power that no one can manipulate, a power that cannot be broken, a power that makes your goodness not a mask, but a choice. And that is the only kind of goodness the world truly needs.